Hello, Professor Morgan here, talking about internal conflicts when it comes to storytelling. Wow, isn't that a very generic screen? Yeah, well, what are you going to do? Okay, so let's look at the basic kind of conflicts that happen in storytelling. And so this list kind of breaks it down into five basic ones, and there are more that can be more. You have the human versus human, human versus society, human versus nature, human versus the God or supreme being. But then they say these are all external, and but we have this one that's internal, human versus self. Now, I'm going to say that the human versus self is really super important in character development because it's the how the person deals with their own um, choices in any of these situations that are going to connect and see them grow and develop and become interesting characters. And I would say these are not necessarily um, distinct from each other. For example, in human versus human, let's say this human wants to buy this piece of land right here, boom, 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 boom. And this human wants to buy this same piece of land right here, boom, 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 boom. Same piece of land. So they both can't have it, but they both want it. Okay, so we have this conflict, and so what does this human value? Why do they want this piece of land? And what does this human want? And why do they want this piece of land? And at what lengths are they going to go to get it? I mean, this human could, be willing if they had the means, they could, pay a lot more for it if this person didn't have the money. This person could kill this person. This person could, I mean, there's any number of things, but what they decide to do often determines on what is their internal conflicts of what they're willing to do. And this is what we're going to kind of focus on really quickly in this video. So consider the following, okay? Good conflict is about values. Now, this quote is, when I interpret this quote, the values are what's important to somebody. You know, what is their, what drives them? And again, values aren't necessarily because someone's like, oh, they've got good values, or they got bad values, whatever. It's really about what drives a person to do anything. And when we have a conflict, so this is, stating that, when we are dealing with conflicts in stories, which stories are about conflict, trouble, and obstacles to overcome, that what makes a conflict good is that it really kind of comes down to values, okay? Um, and what is a person willing to do or not do in any particular case, okay? Because if you read let's say there's a story about basketball, okay? Well, both teams want to win the game. Okay, they both, that's the conflict. This team wants to win the game, and this team wants to win the game. Okay, but at what lengths and what are they going to do um, to ensure that they win the game? Are they going to practice hard and play the game right? Are they willing to play dirty? I mean, this is where we get into this. Now, ways to create conflict. Really, when you're dealing at the character level, and then we're going to look at an example of the story and kind of give you some insight, is what does your main character value? Yeah, it's not necessarily even your main character. It can be any character. What do they value? What's important to them? Okay, it's like what gets them out of bed in the morning? What drives them to do anything that they're going to be doing when they're faced with a choice? Why do they choose what they do? So that's really understanding your character. Um, do any of their values potentially conflict? Well, yeah. So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone really values um, good cooking and and really delicious food. Yet they also value their health, and they find that there's certain things that they really enjoy eating that may not be good for their health. So they may have these values that potentially conflict. They may be like, well, which is more important, and so there's an example of that. Okay. As a writer, how can you reveal the conflict in these values? Okay. So again, the way that I would approach this, how can you reveal the conflicts in these values? So again, you look at a value as like, so I guess it's really when the character is faced with a dilemma, a choice, and then they have to like make a decision. But again, there has to be some sort of indication of why, and it then doesn't have to be explicit. Like, let's say the character's name is I don't know, let's say Angela. Angela really values her peace and quiet of her home. So when the neighbor boys came over to play on her yard, that's when she decided to put up a fence. Okay, you don't necessarily have to explicitly state that, she values her privacy. There's all sorts of different, quietness. There's things that could be, incorporated that in the story. It's like, where she, let's say she works a job where it's very stressful, and when she comes home, she wants to be, quiet, and anything that disturbs that really kind of impacts her life to the point where she would then kind of make choices to do whatever. Okay. So you can review this through the narrative, through discussion, through dialogue, any number of ways. Okay. Sometimes you have values that conflict with themselves. Okay. So again, this is a tricky one because sometimes one thing that seems like a value, uh, an individual value, could be conflicting, and um, that one I'm going to hold on to as I'm going to this when we talk about the book, I'm going to go over with you in a second. I'll explain this one a little bit more. And then the last one is, how can you delve into the complications of that single value? So if you have that particular value of that's something that someone really believes and is holding on to, but it's causing them to be kind of torn and conflicted inside themselves. How can that be portrayed? Well, let's take a look at an example. Okay. Um, this is a book called The Mirror of the Soul, and I happen to know the writer very well. And so I actually wrote this wrote this book rather, based on a song called "The Mirror of the Soul" by a musician named Chris de Burgh, probably most famous in America for his song "Lady in Red." And this song, it was an amazing, beautiful song with a great story. And I contacted his management, pitched an idea to write a book based off the idea. Got permission. Actually worked with Chris and got ideas, and came together with this book. And so, really quickly, the premise of the book is that there's this diamond that falls. So this takes place after the Hundred Years' War between England and France, about the year 1500 or so, and a diamond falls from the sky, and it lands, and this old man finds it, and it has this some supernatural kind of ability that's just as he touches it, it glows, and he feels like this amazing feeling, and it kind of reflects who he is as a person. He's not sure what to do with it, so he takes it to the abbey, um, uh, where the priests are not exactly good folks. In fact, the abbot himself is not a good person, and they see the diamond as a way to um, trick people into making donations to the church for the gain and the well-being of the priests, and the monks rather, and the abbot himself. Um, and one of the petitioners, one of the main character really is a gentleman named Christopher, Christoph, and yeah, Christoph. Anyway, so his character, his he loves to write songs, and he loves to perform at local taverns. And he's married, and he has a son. And he realizes that he cannot support his family solely only by just writing music and performing, and that he has to do something else. So he works for a merchant who is who's very awful to him, treats him poorly, but he makes a living so he can support his family. Now his wife is rather sickly, and she gets very sick every single winter time. And Christophe is miserable at his job. He hates his job. He would rather just be performing, but he has to take care of his family. Um, and he, the abbot says basically through the power of this diamond that people can get blessings of health. They can get blessings, even the promise of eternal life if they donate enough. So Christophe decides that he wants to save up to get a blessing of health for his wife. So selflessly, he's trying to take care of his wife, and he's working in a life where he's miserable. Um, but he's trying to find a way to protect his wife. So this conflict within himself is that um, he's doing something that he hates to do, but he feels the obligation to do it. And he gets to and as the merchant becomes a member of this church and starts donating to the church to get all these blessings, he puts even more pressure on Christophe, which makes it even more difficult for Christophe to save up. And at what point does Christophe, what is he willing to do? Is he start to push, make people buy things they don't want to buy? And I mean, it gets really he becomes super conflicted because he feels like he's selling his soul sort of for something, trying to be something better. So this is like an internal conflict within himself of what is he going to do, based on this. And then the story, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg, as it were, of what this kind of story is about. There's a whole lot more to it. But that is the example of someone who is trying to do something good. He values his family. He values his ability to do storytelling. And the more that he has to work, the less storytelling he can do. And the more he works as he's trying to save up, he has to believe that this is going to work, though his wife is somewhat skeptical. So he also has to, try to convince her that it's going to work. So this is, this helps him become a very dynamic character, and you see his growth and his challenges that he faces as more and more of these conflicts arise, and how he's going to respond to that. And that what makes, and that's how we can see character development, and his internal values then impact his external actions. And I won't spoil what happens because that, again, this may seem self-promoting, but anyway, it is what it is. So again, this is a friendly reminder. So the 5 kinds of conflict really be focused on the human versus self, these eternal conflicts of like what makes a person do what they do, and all of these are going to then influence how they're going to act in any of these types of conflicts. So hope this has been helpful for you to understand how this all works in storytelling, and I wish you all the best.